Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to round 2 coverage of the Zurich 1953 Candidates Match International Chess Tournament. So in this 15-player double round robin, we are now on to round 2. And there was a number of interesting games played out of the 7 games. But there was one game that clearly stood out above the rest, and that's the one I'm going to bring to you in this video. With the white pieces, we have Efim Geller. Efim Geller was a Soviet player from the Ukraine. He had previously won the Ukrainian championship in 1950 and would go on to win the Soviet championship in 1955 and again in 1979. So quite a strong grandmaster. He was also an author and a coach. He coached world champions Boris Spassky and Anatoly Karpov. So quite an accomplished player. With the black pieces, we have Max Euwe, the former world champion. Max was champion from 1935 to 1937. He defeated Alexander Alekhine, and then Alekhine won the championship back in 1937 and was still a champion in 1946. He was never able to arrange another match after that, partly due to the intervention of World War II. So he died holding the championship title, and FIDE arranged a match in 1948 to determine the new world champion that Mikhail Botvinnik won, and so that's how Botvinnik first became champion. So Euwe, a strong player and also a mathematician, and quite a lot of experience with the black pieces. So Geller kicks off with d4, and we get a Nimzo-Indian after knight f6. c4, e6, all the normal moves, knight c3, bishop b4. And now Geller plays e3, the Rubinstein variation, which at the time was the most popular way to play it. Since then, the classical variation has come back into style, which is what Capablanca used to play with queen c2 instead of e3. But this move, e3, is still played today. It's quite a solid continuation with a good reputation. And in fact, Bronstein even comments about the differences in another game. Somebody played in this position knight to f3, which is known as the Kasparov variation today. But what Bronstein had to say about it was, knight f3 is a perfectly fine move instead of e3. And really, it was just an example of how subject chess players are to the whims of fashion, that e3 was played so many times in this tournament and knight f3 only once. Anyway, that's the way things stood in those days. Still a excellent opening. And after c5, Geller plays a3. So this is no longer considered particularly precise. I think after this, black gets basically an equal game. If you want to play a3, usually it's played a move earlier. Right here, immediately after immediately after pinning the knight, you can play immediately after black pins the knight. White can play a3 and go into the same-ish variation. So it's not quite as accurate to play it in this position, but a position that's somewhat double-edged with chances for both sides. And Geller has a clear idea in mind. He's going to build up in the center and then later switch to a king-side attack. And if we back up for a second, there's a bunch of choices that black has in this position. He can castle, he can develop his knight. Euwe elects to go with this b6 and bishop to b7 idea. So bishop d3 was played here, and now bishop b7. So this puts a little bit of uncomfortable pressure on this diagonal. This can be met with either knight f3 or with pawn to f3, and Geller chose to play the pawn to f3 in order to build up a strong center later. So this is all part of his plan. Knight comes out to c6, and now knight e2. So just both sides are developing. These are pretty normal and natural moves. And now knight a5. This is commonly an idea in the Nimzo-Indian. After the bishop has been traded for the knight and these double pawns have been created, this pawn on c4 is weak, and the knight on a5 and the bishop on a6 can double up on that pawn and often just win it. Or, as happens in this game, you can also get more pressure on it by putting the rook on c8 and taking the d-pawn, getting more pressure on it. So white has a choice. He can either try to defend that pawn or just ignore it. And there's points to both. There's reason to play it both ways. In one case you get to hold on to your material, and in the other case, well, you get a lot of compensation because black is wasting time rounding up that pawn, and you get to make progress with your plan. So that's what Geller chooses here. He goes forward with e4 and ignores the threat to the c-pawn, which is not immediate in any case, but eventually that pawn is doomed. So Euwe at this point, he notices that his knight's about to be pinned, and then this e5 would be an uncomfortable threat. And so he gets out of dodge. He moves the knight away from the pin without even waiting to be asked. So this leaves white free to continue developing, and he goes knight g3, once again ignoring the c-pawn. And this time black decides to take. C takes d4, c takes d4, and rook c8, just going after the c-pawn. And there's not really any way to save it here, although there is one interesting way to play. There's different ways that white can give up the pawn, and maybe the most accurate move here is c5. So if white pushes on with c5, black can still win a pawn, but his pieces are left in these somewhat awkward positions. So bishop to e3, white gets a couple of tempi in development. A couple of tempi in development. It gets the bishop out with a tempo, the rook drops back, and then he gets the queen out. And this is, even though white is a pawn down, this pawn here is somewhat backwards. If it pushes on to d4, it'll get turned into an isolated pawn. So this is not a bad position for white. In fact, white can play this with the compensation. And of course, there's no moving the d-pawn immediately because the the knight here is under fire. Let's see, the chess engine is suggesting an interesting move, rook c3 here, which defends the knight and attacks the bishop, and then rook to d1 or queen to d4, rook f d1. And anyway, play continues. Let's see if we back up. It's changed its mind. It likes queen d4 best. Okay, it's a way for white to keep an advantage. The other line was more or less equal. Okay, so that's one way to play it. Geller chose to continue with his idea, which is to have a big center here, ignore the c-pawn, and push on into a kingside attack, taking advantage of the fact that white has got his pieces pushed to the side and edges of the board. So he pushes on with f4. And now knight takes c4 was played, just taking the bull by the horns, as it were, grabbing that pawn. This also gets the knight back into play in a way, gets it closer to the kingside where it may have some use in the future. And now Geller pushes on with f5. So that's the question in this position. White obviously has a tremendous attack brewing. Queen can come over, the bishop can come over. This bishop is also pointing at the king side once these pawns are out of the way, and the knight is already in position to jump in. And the rook also has easy access. So this definitely has an ominous appearance. And black is forced to play some careful defensive moves at this point to survive. So, but Euwe is up to the challenge. He plays f6. And that stops the idea of just pushing this pawn onto f6, and then if the knight takes, then coming back with the pin and threatening to play d5. So just f6, putting a stop to any idea of advancing the f-pawn. Rook f4 now, just preparing the rook to come over here and get some pressure on the h-file. And now b5. So what Bronstein has to say about this move, a very funny move, not one you would think of in this position. He said that of course, white's attack looks tremendously threatening, and not only that, but black's pieces are somewhat conscribed. The knight, for example, can't really get into a defensive position here because black's own pawns are kind of in the way. But he also said that you have to keep in mind that Euwe had played over 70 games against Alekhine, who was the most feared attacking player of our time. So he in no way was a stranger to coming under these sudden and violent attacks. He keeps his cool and realizes that his only way to defend this position is to counterattack. And this move b5, defending the knight here, and preparing an avenue for the queen to come out. Just opening up a space on b6, actually, for the queen. And the defense of the knight, keeping the knight posted here. White probably doesn't want to take the knight anyway, because that would distract this bishop from the attack. The bishop probably wants to stay on this diagonal. But in any case, defending the knight, so the rook is free to move. So rook h4 is played, just continuing with the plan, and soon to follow up with queen to h5 and a checkmate, or at least a serious-looking check on h7. But now, taking advantage of this queen b6 idea, queen is attacking the d-pawn, which is pinned against the king, so it can't move. And this bishop is blocking the defense of that pawn by the queen. So it's too dangerous if black were to try, if white were to try to continue the attack with queen to h4. He didn't play this. It's just way too dangerous. The queen can come in here with check. Look at the knight. The knight is also poised to jump into the attack. So where can the king even run to? The engine is suggesting bishop e3 here, just to sacrifice a piece here to ward off the attack. But if the king goes to any square, then black picks up the rook in the corner. And the queen takes h7. This attack, while threatening looking, the king can just walk away from it. The knight here, although it seemed a bit awkward in some respects, it's defending some key squares there. And white is down a whole rook, his bishop is hanging, and he has no way to effectively continue the attack. There's one more check here, and the king can just walk away. So what that means is that white can't just blindly continue with the attack. He needs to do something. And what he chooses is the move e5. And now you have to wonder about why not queen takes d4 here, which was so effective in the other line. Oh, it's defended by the rook. I'm sorry, I keep missing that. Of course, e5 defends the pawn by allowing this defense from the sides. The rook is doing double duty. It's threatening to attack, and it's also defending the d-pawn. But this d-pawn is pinned, so when knight e5 is played, black can take that pawn. And so now white is 2 pawns down, and his attack really needs to come through to justify this. So, but he starts out, he continues the attack with f takes e6. Still very dangerous looking setup. And now another interesting move, knight takes d3. Not bothering to retake that pawn immediately, but getting rid of this dangerous attacking bishop. And it's very important to do that right away because of the threats on h7. So that move really was almost forced. But the question you have to ask is, why can't white continue with e takes d7? This was not played in the game, but let's show that. If e takes d7, black has the move queen c6, threatening checkmate. So that's the importance of the counterattack, how you can use the counterattack to meet your opponent's threats. So now white has to waste a move to defend g2. The engine suggesting knight e4 is the best way to defend. And now white can grab that pawn, and so he's managed to get rid of the bishop here. We'll have queen takes knight as the next move. And the attack continues. There's 2 rooks and 2 pieces. So the material is even, but white has gathered up another pawn, and black has gathered up another one of white's pawns. And white's attack is not as well coordinated as it was. So this knight takes bishop here has really interrupted things. So back up to the game. After knight takes d3, white plays queen takes d3 immediately, leaving this pawn threat hanging. But now the queen could grab that pawn. So 2 pawns up, but the attack continues because the queen came to the square where the bishop was, and it can come right in here to h7. So the king has to run away. There's only one square. King to f7. And now bishop to h6. So classic attacking moves. Geller is getting all his pieces in the attack. Black's pieces have slowly managed to migrate over with the combination of threats and counterattacks, and getting his pieces out. He's managed to get his pieces somewhat into a defensive position, but he's in kind of a critical situation right here. And now it is possible to defend with the move Rook G8, but this is a very difficult and tricky defense. So Rook G8, White plays Rook F1, getting his last piece into the attack, and now White is Black rather. Black is almost stuck for a move here. He can't really move these pieces that are defending his pawn. But it turns out that in this situation there is not quite enough here for White to win. White can continue increasing the pressure, and what Black has, once again, is this counterattacking idea, getting the queen into the game. And now, let's see, what's the material? 2 rooks and 2 pieces versus 2 rooks, 2 pieces and queen. Yeah, the material is roughly even, except for Black is a couple pawns up. But in this situation, there's really nothing better for... there's also a threat, right? There's the bishop and the queen are coordinating on g2, of course. And Black has to deal with this, and there's nothing better than to play Rook F2, chasing the queen away, Queen D1, and then Rook back, Queen E2, and this would end in a draw. So there is this drawing defense that Black has in this situation. So starting with Rook G8, and with best play that would lead to the draw with a combination of defense and counterattack on G2. But that's not what Max Euwe played. So having seen some of those ideas, maybe you can play Guess the Move here. It's a very interesting move. If you put your chess engine on and let it think for a while, it'll find a different move. It won't find the move that Max Euwe played. But if you want to exercise your chess imagination, think of a move that's a try. It's a winning try for Black, and it's very unexpected, a very surprising and pretty move. Okay, pause the video to give yourself time to think about it. I am giving the answer away now. What Euwe played here is Rook to H8, not Rook to G8. Not bothering to defend this pawn, but just attacking the queen with a rook that is completely undefended. So what is the point of this? If the queen moves away, then the bishop is hanging, and Black is just going to be a piece up, and the attack will have dissipated. So the queen can't really move away, and the queen can't really take the g-pawn, because even though there's a lot of force on the g-pawn, the knight's defending it. So after queen takes g7, knight takes g7, there's just nothing left there. So the only thing that White can do is take the rook. So that was the forcing sequence. And now there's only one move for Black in this situation. So if you didn't guess the combination or the Rook H8 idea, maybe having seen Rook H8, you can guess the follow-up. Okay, first of all, I guess I should point out that Queen E2, which you might like to play to attack here, is not possible because the knight's defending E2. And, of course, Queen E1 is defended by the rook. But there's another piece that can come down to the second rank, and that's the rook. And if you'll see the reason for Rook H8 now, the queen was on the H7 square defending against Rook C2. And so by sacrificing his rook, Euwe has opened up the C2 square and placed a rook on it. And now it's very tricky. There's only one move that White can play to draw the game. He has no winning chances anymore, and he's fighting for a draw. And Geller, perhaps in time trouble, perhaps not. We're only on move 23, 24 in the game. But over the board, he was not able to find this move. And so what he played was Rook C1. And after Rook C1, Black is just winning. So Black takes the pawn on G2, and it doesn't really matter where the king goes. If the king goes to H1, there's a mate in 3. So let's go ahead and show this. rook takes g3, grabbing the knight with check, because the bishop is attacking along this diagonal, and there's no defense. The pawn comes here, the bishop takes. And what does it say? It says rook e4. Oh, right. He can throw a rook in there, but that's checkmate because the rook is guarding all the escape squares, and the bishop is delivering the check. So a pretty checkmate. So the king can't go to h1, so the king goes to f1, the only other move. And now queen to b3, kind of a quiet move, but just getting the queen in play to deliver the final blow, and there's no real defense at this point. The chess engine is recommending queen takes e8 because every other move leads to a mate in a few moves. What Geller tried was king to e1, and after queen to f3. So the queen from b3 just had too many avenues into black's position. He resigned here. There's no way to meet all of the threats. Let's see, for example, leaving aside queen, these funny queen moves. Let's see, rook e4 is a try. Yeah, all these things don't look too attractive, but say he tries rook e4. Then queen to f2 check, driving the king to d1. And is this, oh, the bishop is still guarding this square. Okay, it's not totally easy. I was thinking queen here is mate, but rook here, check. And now the knight has to interpose, and that's checkmate. So lots of different checkmates possible here, but no way out, basically. So after after the move queen f3, white resigned. So that's how the game ended. Let's back up for a second, though, and show the miracle defense. So after queen takes h8 and rook to c2, there was one move that could hold, and that is the move d5. This is the move he needed to find over the board. And not just the move, he had to find the whole variation. So bishop takes, and then rook to d1, hitting the bishop. And now rook takes g2 check. The king can run to h1 now, because when the rook moves to grab the knight, for example, this rook can grab the bishop, and so there's no way out. Oops, I got that wrong. King to f1. Oh, king to h1 is still made in two. Sorry about that. King to h1. Yeah, rook takes g3 check. This doesn't help. Rook takes d5, queen e1, still checkmate. So it's the other line. After the check, the king can run to f1. And then how does black continue the attack here? We've reached a kind of situation where there's death is hanging over both sides. Let's see. Rook a2 is recommended, just going pawn grubbing, I guess. Bishop d2. How about g takes h6, trying to cash in on the material? Because let's see, if we count the material, there's two rooks and a piece versus one rook and two pieces. Yeah, black was down a whole rook, so he needs to get some material back. Queen takes h6, and this position is roughly even. Okay, you have to take the computer's word for it. Or something like rook a2, which maybe has some mating ideas with the queen coming in, can be defended with bishop d2, blocking the second rank. And now bishop to c4 check, king to f2, and queen to b6 check. You get lots of checks. King to f3, but there's no mate. Bishop to d5 check. Where can the king run to? King runs to e2, bishop c4 check, and we get a perpetual. So black being down significant amounts of material would have to settle for a perpetual in that line. This is the kind of thing, if we back up to where the decision had to be made, right here, he had to find the move d5, but he had to also analyze all those continuations and make sure that he had a way to draw in all of those complicated lines, and he wasn't able to find them. So the game continued, rook c1, and as we saw, queen comes in, and after queen f3, White resigned. So that left the standings after round 2 with Geller Euwe in the lead because he won his game in round 1. So Max Euwe had 2 points at the end of round 2. And other players on, there's nobody else on 2. There's a couple other players on 1 and 3 players at 1.5. David Bronstein with 1.5 points. He won his first round game and drew the second. Yuri Averbach with 1.5 points, drew in the first round and then won in the second round. And then Gideon Stahlberg, the Swedish player, drew in the first round and won in the second round. So interesting start to this tournament. Max Euwe in the early lead. Stay tuned, and I will provide more updates in this coverage of the 1953 Zurich Candidates Tournament. Leave any comments you have in the section below. Bye.